Thank you. Welcome, everybody. It is Thursday, May 18th, 2023. It is, in fact, 9:30, and I'm calling this meeting of the Finance and Admin Committee to order. As we gather this morning, I would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. At this time, we've got a couple of changes to the agenda this morning, so I'm just going to turn this over to Mr. Kelly for a moment.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to committee. So, apologies for the changes to the agenda. It was an error, a clerical error. We are very pleased to welcome Canoe Procurement here today. Simon McClendon is here with us and will deliver a report on joint procurement through LAS, the local. What's the acronym stand for? I'm blanking out. Local. Thank you. I knew it was that. So Simon will deliver that presentation and will be willing to answer questions at the end of that. So thank you, Simon, for that, and apologies for the omission on the agendas today. Also circulating on your desk is a revised item number 7 due to some recent advice we have from our legal counsel. We just have some revisions to put before you as a revision and a split of the recommendation that was originally in your agenda. So we can discuss more of that when we come to item number 7, Chair, and thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson, has roll call been taken?
Through you, Chair, yes, roll call has been taken.
Thank you very much. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? I see none. Can I get an adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting held on April 13th, please? Moved by the member from North Algona Wilberforce, seconded by Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards. Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. And at that, we will turn it over to Mr. Perkins to introduce our delegation.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to committee. We'd like to introduce Simon McLennan. He's the Strategic Account Manager for Canoe Procurement Canada, Group of Canada. So with that, Mr. Lennon will give us a brief presentation on what canoe purchasing can do for the County of Renfrew and for other municipalities in our partner municipalities. So thank you. Thanks, Simon. Thank you, sir.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for having me. I apologize if I was a late addition to this agenda. I will go through this as quickly as possible and try to make it as humanly efficient as we can. My name is Simon McClendon. I am a 613-based Strategic Account Manager for Canoe Procurement. I look after all the major cities across the country. You are going to have a different representative that looks after this particular area, but she's currently on vacation in Europe. So it's me today. If you will indulge me, I will try and get through this as quickly as possible. I will go through I will avoid the program-specific stuff at the end, unless anybody requests it. I have had a meeting with multiple of the municipalities within this room separately, and I did a meeting with the senior administration of the county 3 weeks ago, I believe, or 2 weeks ago, and that's where my invite for this came. So if you wouldn't mind, first slide. So Canoe Procurement, who is Canoe Procurement? We are Canada's largest not-for-profit group buying organization. When I say not-for-profit, the way our organization is set up is we have a head office, which is in Alberta, and then we partner with a municipal association in every province across the country from BC to Newfoundland. We have 2 exceptions in that case. The first one is the Yukon. We don't have a partnership in the Yukon because they don't have a municipal association for us to partner with, but we do service their municipalities out of our BC and Alberta office. And then we don't have a partnership in Quebec because the Quebec government is, they have legislation which we can't circumnavigate, unfortunately. We've been in Ontario since 2019, and our partner here is LAS. LAS is Local Authority Services, which is a division, the business division of the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. I'm sure you're very familiar with that. You'd all be members of that program. And then by default, you're actually already members of the Canoe program via your membership with AMO. We have 5,000 members across Canada. We do everything government space, but our focus is municipalities. We probably do 95% of our business runs through the municipal sector. We are owned by a municipal association. We are a municipal association, and we partner with municipal associations across the country. So if, say, a school board was to make a purchase, a percentage of that administration fee that we collect as a not-for-profit for operations still would go to the municipal association. So we build our programs around municipalities, and then we have fringe benefits through education districts, universities. The provincial governments use us, the federal governments use us in certain circumstances. And that's the way our organization is set up. Excuse me. And then in Canada, we are Sourcewell's Canadian partner. So if you're unfamiliar with Sourcewell, which I imagine you probably are, Sourcewell is a large not-for-profit buying group based out of Minnesota in the US. They're a national organization. They have a buying power of 50,000. So in Canada, we have access to 5,000 members, and we negotiate our contracts based on that. And then when we do our capital purchasing contracts in partnership with the US, we do all of the administration. It's managed exclusively through Canada, but we leverage their contracts and turn that over to our membership so we can deepen those savings again on certain products. That's more the bigger items, so fire trucks, snow plows, graders, any type of equipment, playgrounds, you name it, we've probably got a solution for it. Next slide, please. There's a little map of our coverage, again, just highlighting that we don't have that relationship in Quebec because we do get asked, especially in Eastern Ontario. I was doing a presentation in Hawkesbury a little while ago, and they said, well, our neighbor in Quebec would like to use us, and I said, I bet they would, but unfortunately, we can't translate 1.5 million pages of documentation. So, next slide, please. So a group buying organization, our group buying organization specifically. So how do we help? Group buying organizations are set up for two reasons, and pretty much two reasons alone. The first one is to save you money. So when we do the public tender process the exact same way that a municipality would do it, we do it on a much more robust scale because we're posting nationally, we're awarding nationally, internationally in certain cases, and we're turning those savings over to municipality. So in the example of we use in Ontario, if we look at the City of Toronto has a purchasing staff of 160 people, just buyers, that's all they do, right? They spend tens and tens of millions of dollars. City of Toronto spends more money in procurement than the governments of Saskatchewan and Manitoba combined annually, right? So they've got a purchasing power that the County of Renfrew unfortunately just does not have. In our world, we've got a bigger purchasing power than Toronto, and the County of Renfrew would pay the exact same price on an item as the City of Toronto. So we don't discriminate based on size. We don't have any differences in the way our contracts are set up based on where you live and where you work. With the exception of a tax rate, that discount extends all the way across the country. That never changes. So instead of going to tender for one lawnmower, as an example, a silly example maybe, but instead of going to tender for one lawnmower or one tractor or one snowplow, we go to tender for an entire category, so lawn maintenance equipment, winter maintenance equipment. We say, hey, bring us back your best discount percentage on something like a snowplow or lawnmowers or Zambonis or whatever it may be, insert category here. And then we turn that saving over to the member. We don't promise the vendor sales, but we do promise them access to a potential list of 5,000 people in the country, hence why we can negotiate the pricing that we negotiate. And the second and most important thing, in my opinion, depending on especially the more rural municipalities, I live in a rural municipality, is we save time. So in the instance of the County of Renfrew, to the best of my knowledge, there is no procurement person or procurement department. I know it's become a bit of a discussion, and there's a lot of municipalities across Ontario that are in the same position. So instead of hiring someone or turning over more and more administration time onto the limited procurement resources that most municipalities have in Ontario, we do all of that heavy lifting for you. So if you're tendering something like an aerial ladder truck for your fire department, it's a big piece of equipment. It's probably the most expensive piece of equipment we can do through Canoe. They're averaging coming in now around about $2.5 million. The tender time from identifying that need and closing that RFP with your questions, your building, all of that exciting stuff that the government requires you to do, is probably about 250 man-hours between the fire department, procurement, treasury, coming to council, getting approvals. We do all of that bit. In our world, the way that organization would work is you would identify that you need to purchase a fire truck. You would go on our website, you would look at our available vendors of fire trucks who have been awarded a contract through Canoe, and then you would spec out your truck. They would send you back a price with a pre-negotiated discount that everybody, again, it's the same discount here as it is in Vancouver because they're national contracts. You get that discount back, and you've saved all of that bit in the middle. And that eliminates a couple of problems. First one is you can build a truck to your spec. You're not going to get any surprises if you go to public tender and it comes back. And then we use the example in Canoe. There was a municipality in Manitoba that got all of the specs right with the exception of length, and the fire truck didn't fit in the firehouse. So we eliminate problems like that. If you have a mechanical fleet where every piece of equipment is, let's say it's a John Deere or Caterpillar or something to that effect, and you go to tender and a different manufacturer comes in at low bid, your maintenance team might not be equipped to deal with that piece of equipment, and then you've got a cost of ownership discussion as well. So we can eliminate a couple of those problems. But the biggest part is the heavy lifting between identifying your need as a municipality, as an upper or lower tier, and then making that purchase and doing the whole process. That legal process that takes place in the middle, we do completely. So every piece of our documentation is public facing. There's no passwords. We don't have any, there's no smoke and mirrors, there's no gray areas in our industry. We're a government-owned entity, we have to operate as one. You can see the discount percentage on pieces of equipment, you can see exactly who signed contracts, you can see the evaluation committee's reports, you can see the board resolutions all the way down to where the RFP went out and how we posted it. So that entire process for the comfort and understanding of council, procurement, treasury, all of that good stuff, we totally cover. From an additional benefits standpoint, I really am rushing through this, I apologize. From an additional standpoint, we continue to work with local suppliers. So if we use the example of that lawnmower again, if the county is in the market for a lawnmower, if you have a local Kubota dealership or you have a local John Deere dealership or a distributor, you buy it from them. Right? What happens is that contract's negotiated at a corporate level. It filters its way down, sometimes through a couple of emails via me and my supplier team, but that local dealership has the exact same ability to sell that piece of equipment at that pre-negotiated price that their corporate head office dealt with. So we're not a wholesaler. We don't have a warehouse full of graders. We don't have a warehouse full of tires. We don't have a warehouse full of, insert piece of equipment here. It's all bought at the most local possible level to you as a municipality. We have 302 at last count vendors. And when I say we do everything, there's really not much we don't cover in the municipal space. So, everything from a box of staples through our office supplies contract to that $2.5 million aerial ladder fire truck. Everything in between. If we look at the example of an arena, which is a good example that I use, for canoe, so we can do the doors, the security cameras, the Zamboni, the seats, the scoreboard, the computers that the staff are working in, the ice refrigeration unit itself, the paint, the glass. What we can't do is provide you with an architect to tell you how to build your arena, and we can't provide you with hockey players and Zamboni drivers. We don't do human capital. We wish we could. We are looking into it, especially on the engineering front, doing things like phase 1s, phase 2s, environmental site assessments and things to that effect. But it's a lot more complicated to tender those type of products because it's so job specific, right? So your arena is going to be one size, and then the arena down the road in Prince Edward County, for example, is going to be a totally different size. Same equipment on the inside, but the way that project is constructed, unfortunately, we can't help with. Canoe, as a not-for-profit, we're totally free to use. So we don't ever charge a membership fee. We don't enter any kind of contract with the municipality. We are a service-based, as you need to use it benefit. So we take an administration fee as a not-for-profit to pay for me and the branded clothing and the Holiday Inn from last night and the things that we have to do our presentations. But ultimately, we take that administration fee from the vendor, and it's very nominal. It's in 2% or lower in most cases. And then the way our model is set up, if we have 1% as an example, and just to disclose this piece of information, in Ontario, the way it's set up is half of that percent of that $100,000 piece of equipment, for example, goes to Canoe to pay for us and our team and these educational meetings and things to that effect. The other half we actually give to AMO, and then AMO reinvests that in municipal programming. It helps with their conferences, it does education and training, and gives them the ability to invest in more programs that benefit municipalities. So we operate like a circular economy. Another good thing in our world is instead of going to tender and then you have a close date of, say it's June 15th, after June 15th at 4 p.m., there's no more questions. You can't interact with the vendor. You're heading into a legal contract with that person. In our world, you can negotiate and have discussions with the vendor all the way up until the time of purchase. So that barrier of, hey, we might end up with something we didn't want, or hey, we need to get a specific brand has been moved. And again, the last thing is we don't have any minimum purchasing commitments. You don't have to buy everything from us. You can look at our list of suppliers and say, great, we need 3 lawnmowers, 2 snowplows, and a fire truck this year. Or you can look at it and say, we're just going to buy our tires from them and get the same thing we've been buying every year at a slightly cheaper price. There's no commitment to using our organization whatsoever. We're free to use, always will be, and that will never change. Next slide, please. From a compliance standpoint, for the finance folks in the room, Like I mentioned earlier, the CFTA governs how municipalities and any level of government has to conduct their procurements. We follow that legislation to a T. We're in line with every single piece of procurement legislation that operates within the country of Canada. We have never seen the inside of a courtroom. We've never been challenged on any of our procurements. This is not an issue we run into. We're 100% compliant with all of those, the treaties, the trade agreements, the CFTAs, the CETAs, the NWPTAs, the BPS in Ontario. There's a whole bunch of acronyms that cover how procurement has to take place, and we're compliant with all of them. We post publicly, we award publicly. Every piece of documentation that comes with that tender that you would operate as a municipality, even though it's a larger contract, is available at any time for anyone to see. Next slide, please. This is a very powerful slide that kind of illustrates exactly how our buying group works, or how any other buying group works. I will say we're not the only ones in town. There are some that are very specific to medicine. Hospitals pretty much buy everything through group procurement organizations because they're mandated by the province to do so. So does school districts. So there's one called the Ontario Education Marketplace. They do a lot of, they're very educationally heavy. And then there are for-profit buying groups. The difference between a for-profit and our model obviously is that administration fee that comes from the vendor that's going into somebody's pocket. It's not going back to the municipal association. So the way that your traditional procurement works is this 11-step process. We essentially just remove steps 3 through 9. So we do all of that heavy lifting, the tender process, all of the awards, everything in the middle that takes all that time, that administrative time, which quite frankly these days as municipalities are operating on, paper-thin lines of employees, unfortunately, and I travel all over the province and all over the country, and it's the same everywhere. It's just, it's not getting any better. But good procurement people are a dime a dozen right now too. Because with the hybrid work model, the largest cities can pay a procurement person big city money, but they can still stay in their small town and work that way. So it's becoming a bit of a strain, especially on smaller and medium-sized municipalities. We fill a big chunk of that gap. Next slide, please. I was going to skip the programs piece because it's going to be relevant to each different municipality. Like I mentioned, and I have gone through this with your administration team, so I don't want to take up all of your morning, since I was a late addition. However, we do day-to-day contracts, so things that the municipality would buy on a day-to-day basis or a year-to-year basis, things like culverts, things like tires, things like office supplies, things like, laser levels through street signage, construction rentals, those kind of things. We do all of that, and then we also cover things, and that's where the real value is, quite honestly. If you've been buying tires for your fleet for the last 10 years, we have a pre-negotiated national level contract with Michelin, Yokohama, Cal Tire, Fountain Tire, any of those, there we are, on the screen right there. And you just get an account number, you keep purchasing the same thing, and you start getting the same thing you've been buying and saving the taxpayers some money. Next slide. Office supplies is our largest program nationally behind culverts. So these are things that you purchase on a day-to-day basis. There is a municipality in the room that I know for a fact purchases all of their office supplies through our program. We've got pretty good relationships in this part of the country. It's a benefit of living where I live. So office supplies are covered everything from computers all the way down to the boxes of pens. Next slide. Auto parts in Ontario by revenue. Revenue is a bit of a loose term in our industry, but as far as municipal expenditure, auto parts is by far and away the largest. So it's somewhere in the tune of $20 to $25 million a year go through canoe programs just for auto parts in Ontario. Fleet upfitting, all of the things you need to bolt to, attach to the side, the front, the back end of any type of vehicle. Next one. Traffic supplies we've already talked about. Next one. Geospatial program, laser levels, engineering tools, any of those. Next. Electrical supplies. Next. MRO, this is a really big category for us because that's everything from garbage bags to janitorial to nuts, bolts, welding machines, scissor lifts, caution wet floor signs, you name it, these guys have it. With Granger as an example, they have over 500,000 different SKUs that get category discounted to our membership. And then capital purchasing. So that's all of the large things. I always try to draw attention to the Gov deals. So you guys probably surplus your surplus equipment through Gov deals. We even have a contract with Gov deals that the percentage that Gov deals will charge you to sell your vehicles is lower through the canoe contract. So we really have kind of thought of everything. And all of our contracts come based on requests from municipalities. So we don't just throw up categories for no real reason. It all comes in. As long as it's quoted through with a contract number on it, our role is to make sure that the process is operated correctly. The vendors have a responsibility to the municipalities. We have to make sure that they're following those rules because, you can get audited and we want to make sure that everybody's doing everything correctly. Touch wood, so far everything's going very well. In Ontario, we're pretty new. We've grown again, revenue is a loose term, but we've tripled our revenue as a purchasing agent year over year for the last 3 years. So more and more municipalities in Ontario using us. Of the 444, 350 plus use us. And then we have all the school boards, not-for-profits, and everything in between that can utilize us. So, Madam Chair, through you, thank you very much for your time. I really appreciate it. Sorry to jump in last minute, and I will take any and all questions you have.
Thank you. That was very interesting, actually.
I'm glad.
And I see for everybody, Lee has sent out the presentation, so you have it now for your package, and you can take it back to your local municipality. Member from North Algona Wilberforce, please.
Yes, thank you, and through you, Chair. The biggest challenge I think we all face as smaller municipalities is when a tender is issued and a price is, or the tender returns come in, the price is no longer guaranteed. They may tell you that, well, in a year and a half, this is going to cost you 15% more. So it's very, very hard to determine whether you are actually getting the best price for your equipment. How does Canoe manage that?
Great question through you, Madam Chair. So we are not immune to it, unfortunately. We do our best. So the way our organization operates is we have category-based discounts. So using the real-world example, I did a presentation to 17 fleet managers in Eastern Ontario last July. Of those 17, 15 had gone to tender for a plow truck. 2 got responses, and the 2 that actually got responses had $30,000 on average surcharge over and above what they'd awarded at a tender price, which is a crazy number in municipal politics. It's not like you guys have a big coffer full of money. So the way we're trying to educate our membership and our vendors is we'll use the example of a snowplow. So you go out to one of our manufacturers, we have about 9 or 10 we have one that can do it the whole thing turnkey, and then we have others that you can get your cab and chassis here and you can get your winter maintenance equipment here. I have not seen it since I've been here for a year and a half. I've seen one quote come through that has a very, very descriptive, we anticipate delivery of this period of time, right? If it's not delivered by this period of time, the increase that we anticipate might be 8%. And that was on a very, very specific piece of equipment. They are very clear, our vendors, as best as possible, and again, we cannot predict the future, we do our best. They're very clear as if they think there's going to be an upfit in cost, you can do that. Now, the bonus of they'll outline that, very clearly. Now, in our world, the big bonus of utilizing a group buying contract is you can have that discussion with the vendor up front. So what happens when you go to tender, you award low bid, you're in a legal contract with that manufacturer. You sign the PO, they quote you, let's say it's $250,000, and then when you take delivery 2 years from now, it's $275,000. You can have that discussion with the vendor up front before you choose to make a purchase. We have examples of, I've seen municipalities buy a $400,000 vacuum truck, and they had 3 manufacturers come in and do demonstrations. 2 of them were Canoe vendors, 1 was not. They disqualified the third, just had nothing to do with using the Canoe process. The municipality actually went with the one that was more expensive because they got 2 quotes from 2 of our vendors, which you can do at any time. They went with the one that was more expensive because 2 reasons. 1, the cab and chassis was the same as what their fleet had already used. And the second thing was it was going to arrive 6 months earlier. But it still came in under that pre-approved budget. Now, they were very clear on that quotation. We can make this delivery happen by 6 months. By doing that, we will not have a surcharge. We don't anticipate this price. It is going to happen. We're not immune to it. We can't predict inflation, but that's another reason why our stuff it's percentage discounts. So if it's $100,000 today and $108,000 tomorrow, and it's 26% off, which is a pretty common discount in our world, the 26 remains the same. So we're protecting both the municipality and the vendor, and we tell them very clearly that we want them to anticipate any price increases as best as possible.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Kelly.
Thank you, Chair, and to committee. So as Simon has suggested, we met with Simon, oh gosh, feels like a month ago or so.
2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago? Yeah.
Your 2 weeks is my month, so there you go. So fair enough. It was a great meeting. I think what was described today was, and pointed out, the County of Renfrew doesn't have a specific procurement person. Each department is a silo amongst itself that takes care of their own procurement, from pens and paper down to in long-term care from hygiene products and otherwise. So I think for now, this is not a substitute for a procurement person per se. It closes the gap and tightens us up a little bit. So our discussion after the conversation was that the team here would assess the canoe product and bring back a recommendation to committee, likely in June, about the costs or the implications to joining canoe, the benefits and I guess disadvantages if there are any, and work it from there. Because if I look at Public Works, for instance, who is the largest procurement of items, this would alleviate some of those concerns, and also work with some of the lower tiers of local municipalities on this as well. Altogether, as a larger buying group, I think would help us all out. It is a very convenient, if I could say that, I think Mr. Foss would agree, convenient that Canoe can do this form of procurement rather than our a little more clumsy way of doing procurement, let's call it, because they have vendors of record and have already gone through the procurement for many people. So this will streamline a lot of our purchases, I think, on some of the items that at least can do. We did talk about long-term care, and I don't think that's something that Canoe is doing a lot of right now, but I think is willing to entertain that moving forward. So again, to shorten the summary up is that we will bring back a report to you in June with some recommendations from staff. Thank you, Chair.
That's great. Thank you for that. And I think, this goes back to something that the warden is constantly saying is that, I don't care if we have red trucks or yellow trucks or orange trucks as our fleet, but at the beginning of the year, you should know what's in your asset management plan as a local tier, and that would be the time that we band together and if they have 10 gray trucks for 7 municipalities, yay. And I think that this is an opportunity for shared service where we haven't seen it before. But what is Canoe an acronym for?
That's a very good question, Madam Chair, and it's because it's the same word in English and in French, and in the old days they used to transport goods and services across the country in canoes. It's not an acronym, it's just boats, and ironically, we don't procure them.
Okay.
We get asked all the time. Yeah.
I just assumed.
Yeah, no, it's in a world of acronyms, we're just a regular old word.
Yeah, because, we just live in the acronym,
Yeah.
right, and initializations. So, sorry, Mr. Warden.
Thank you. Great presentation, and glad to see this, frankly. Couple good quick questions. Local service and warranties afterwards, because we do see tenders come across for pickup trucks from Durham, and that causes some consternation amongst our local suppliers. And I must add, I'm glad to see tires and grader blades and stuff like that, because I think it follows the Alberta municipal model from about 10 years ago. They were doing group purchasing. So just after sales, and is there any kind of a follow-up report a year down the road, just as a review of we purchased 12 trucks and the 8 municipalities that got them are happy, that kind of thing. So warranty, follow-up, after sales service.
Through you, Madam Chair, great question. Well, a couple of questions there. So the first one is utilizing that example that you used of the Alberta purchasing method. That's who we are. So the Rural Municipalities of Alberta, the original founding association, and then we all got in a room and said, hey, we should roll this out across the country because all of the municipalities in Canada stand to benefit from something like this. So we just kind of sever the piece of Canoe and we operate in each province, but my accounting department is based with the Rural Municipalities of Alberta. None of the revenue from Ontario touches Alberta, but that's just the way our organization's set up. As to your question on warranties and after-parts service, so especially in the world of vehicles, warranty is actually something that we evaluate against. So if we look at heavy construction equipment, and I want to get back to the fleet vehicles thing. So if we look at heavy construction equipment, as we weight the score out of 1,000, like the procurement professionals and lawyers who evaluate all of these submissions, and then part of that 1,000, I think it's 150, if my knowledge serves me correctly, in that category is actually awarded against their after-service and warranty. Right? So all of those things that you would put into your tender, like insurance bonding, ability to service, manufacturer, aftermarket parts, all of that stuff is actually factored into our evaluations. And our vendors, the ones that have been on particularly for a long period of time, like we just renewed our heavy construction equipment. To put that in perspective, we do, through Canoe in Canada alone, we do 15% of all Caterpillar grader sales globally. We sell 30% of all Michelin Snow Plus tires that go on piece of heavy equipment, just in Canada. So these guys are getting very good at responding to our tenders. They know what the municipalities are looking for. If you've got a maintenance contract or your warranty service within that local dealership, it'll stay with that local dealership. Where applicable. It's not always going to happen because there's going to be specialist pieces of equipment like fire trucks, for example, or certain types of winter maintenance equipment that it might have to go back to the manufacturer to be worked on. But the warranty that you get presented in your quote is actually one of the things that we evaluate against when we do our submissions. To the point of fleet vehicles, and I was having a conversation just before about this. So one of the only things we can't do on an individual basis is light duty vehicles. And there's a couple of reasons for that. So between the manufacturers, so if we look at Ford, GM, across there's a dealer relationship there. And the dealers have been the ones that have been selling municipalities vehicles for the last 50, 60 years. Now, the ironic part of that, and I'm not throwing anybody under the bus, is those are the same dealerships that are now no longer responding to your tenders because they can sell that same truck they've got sitting on the lot that was allocated for government to you and I for 30%, 40%, 50% more than what the municipality's been traditionally paying for it. We do have a fleet management program with open-ended leases that have buyback programs. So it's through enterprise fleet management, very similar to the rental car company. Their actual larger company is corporate fleet management. Canoe, we operate on corporate fleets, so they have like a maintenance schedule. You get the trucks, like they guarantee vehicles is kind of a big thing because there's not a lot of vehicles out there right now. Ironically, there's thousands of them sitting in lots, but they're just missing a window or a microchip or something to that effect. Supply chain's a real problem, it really is. Cost of everything's wild, but we can do a fleet replacement through that enterprise group at a discount of what they would regularly charge a municipality. And then they have what's called a sweet spot where they'll take that vehicle out of the fleet and replace it with a new one. So your operational time is very low, if not zero. You can bang it up, put stickers on it, stick lights on it, whatever you need to do. And then you actually get the buyout of what the value of that vehicle is as a resale. So if I get 9 questions in a week, 8 of them are, hi, can I buy a pickup truck? The answer is yes, but it's done in a different way. Now, municipalities in Ontario have traditionally been against the leasing method because it's very hard to put that in a capital budget, right? It becomes an operational expense as opposed to a capital expense. And that gets complicated and it's a little bit of work on site. But I have a major GTA municipality that has a ton of buying power on their own. They can't even get vehicles and they're about to buy 130 pickup trucks through my program. Because, through the leasing program, because they're just at wit's end. They have no other option.
Supplementary, Warden?
Thank you. I think that was a great answer. And then those funny little oblong boxes that are 3 feet high and 2 feet wide and sit in hot rooms, and they scan and print and photocopy and all sorts of really neat things. Smaller municipalities, if you get a brand that's not one of the top 2 or 3 national brands, they have to be serviced out of Ottawa or serviced from a distance, and they have to come in, so they're down for a while. Is that something that the Canoe is involved in with the scanners, printers, whatever that box is, and then a service contract that's not 5 hours away?
Those magic $20,000 boxes, yeah, through you, Madam Chair. The ones that sit in a dark corner but cost you a fortune every year, yeah, very familiar. So we have, I think, off the top of my head, without looking at my computer, I think we have 6 different manufacturers in the printing and copying space, all the big players, so Ricoh, Konica Minolta, Insert, all the Canon, the other ones I think we have. We also have a technology contract through CDW. So CDW is a retailer and a reseller of all of those brands under kind of one umbrella. And we have a very large contract with CDW. They do a ton of business with municipalities. I recommend to people that they go through one of our technology, larger providers, and then that service person that's attached to your municipality comes through the program as well. As opposed to, but how you would negotiate, I've never seen anyone have to send anything to Ottawa. I know that service technicians and part of those follow-up contracts on us are covered under our contracts, but again, each one of them slightly different than the other. They might all be the same brands you have sitting around, lying around. We see a lot of people take advantage, especially in the last 2 years with COVID, these cameras and this virtual meeting space, a company like CDW or those other manufacturers, they can actually do all of this stuff through our program. I just did one for actually a First Nation in Eastern Ontario, just updated all of their Zoom capabilities and stuff through our program as well. So it's going to be contract specific is the short answer there, but it depends on the manufacturer.
Thank you.
Thank you. The member from Edmundston Bromley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much, Simon. Again, I did have you in our municipality, so very pleased to have reviewed the presentation once again. A question, so it's germane from just the previous one. You had mentioned each of the individual national brands, international brands for the technology copying, et cetera, but then also the retail distributor, if you will, of CDW. And it occurred to me first when you were discussing the tires. So you discussed a couple of specific tire manufacturers, names that everyone is familiar with, Goodyear, Michelin, et cetera. But then you also mentioned Cal Tire and Tirecraft that are the distributors. So just as an example, so my municipality is going to buy a Michelin through Cal Tire. So is it taking advantage of two distinct elements then? Much like if it's CDW and we're going to procure a Canon photocopier, is that then also taking advantage of two distinct procurement agreements that Canoe has, LAS has?
Through you, Madam Chair, good question. So using the tire example first, so tires is a very good example of that. So we do have a contract with Michelin, right? And I'm just used the two examples that you used. So we have a contract with Michelin nationally, or Goodyear or Yokohama. Then we have a contract with Cal Tire nationally. If you purchase that Michelin tire through Cal Tire, you are technically using two different contracts because Cal Tire is selling you that Michelin tire at the pre-negotiated price that we have for our Michelin contract. So Cal Tire just punches a button in their computer system. You go and we say, hey, we need 6 Snow Plus tires for January 12th. And they'll plug that in and they put in Canoe contract and that gives you back the price under Michelin. Now the installation and the service that they do is discounted through the Cal Tire dealership. In the instance of those two tire manufacturers that aren't the national brands themselves, so essentially you can go to that store, have your work, your install done, they'll sell you the tire through the Cal Tire contract, but it's the pricing that we have as our national account for Michelin. On a brand that we don't have a national account for, so a Bridgestone, a Firestone, something like that, Cal Tire, within their contract, can actually turn over a discount to the municipality. It's not as heavy as the national contracts, but it is a separate type of contract as well. They're just essentially leveraging one on the other. You'll get a bill from a Cal Tire, but the Michelin tire you've purchased is at the price that we have as a contract. And then the sales and service and after parts, that's part of the Cal Tire contract or the Fountain Tire contract as a separate entity.
Interesting. The member from Laurentian Hills, please.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. So you said that as a member of AMO, we are automatically a member of Canoe, and we can go right ahead and contact you, or is there some sort of registration process?
Thank you. I'll make this red button work eventually. So the short answer is you are a member of the Canoe program. So when we go to tender for an item, this is what I mean by this. So when we go to tender for an item, we list every member of every municipal association that we partner with across the country. So, Amherst Bromley is a member of AMO. They're by default a potential user of the Canoe program is the way that's set up. Our registration process follows in a couple of ways. So you have to fill out a membership form, which I believe you've already done at a county level anyway. It takes about a minute to fill it out, and it's an accounting function more than anything else. Some of our contracts are billed slightly differently. Like some of them, we actually take over the AP, so you'd get an invoice from LAS, and we do that form, so we know where to send those bills to, is mainly the thing. From a compliance standpoint, the municipality has to post what's called a notice of intent. So there's 3 things you have to do. Fill out that membership form, it's free, takes 2 minutes, it's very easy to do. Then we kind of switch you on. You're in our system already, but if you're not making purchases, we just kind of click a button and then voila, you're there. The second part is you have to post what's called a notice of intent. So the CFTA, the Canadian Free Trade Agreement, mandates that for a municipality or any government entity to utilize a group purchasing organization like ours, it's very clear within the CFTA that you can do that. You have to notify the public. So you have to put on where you would regularly post your bids and tenders. So if you were going, we're buying a snowplow this year, the same spot you put that snowplow tender, you put up the notice of intent. We provide that to you. You don't change the wording. It's very important that you don't change the wording because the one issue you can really get wrong with the program like this is if you say, we intend to use the LAS buying group or Canoe procurement to purchase a Zamboni, and then next week you purchase a bulldozer, the bulldozer's not covered. So it's a blanket statement. And what you're doing there is you're protecting the municipality for audit reasons. So when if someone picks up the phone and says, I saw a new piece of equipment drive down the street, why was there no tender? Why didn't I get a chance to bid on that? It's like, well, we bought it through a buying group. right? It does happen, happens rarely because most of them are on the program anyway, especially at a large brand. And the second thing that we don't have any control over is your internal procurement policy. So your internal procurement policy, you can't get in any legal trouble, but you could get in taxpayer trouble. So your internal procurement policy must be updated to reflect we intend to use cooperatives as the municipality sees fit. But that's the process for joining our organization. Post your notice of intent, and it's really to cover you on purchases over $121,700. And then you amend your procurement policy. If it's not, I probably see 12 of these a week, and 11 of them have group buying in them. It's very rare that hasn't been adopted. Normally, procurement policies are kind of borrowed from neighboring municipalities. You review them once every 5 years. It gets slipped into a consent agenda that you're going to add cooperative purchasing. It's a pretty small amendment. And then that notice of intent and that membership form, that's how you join our program. There's no fee to it or anything like that.
Thank
But it
you.
is important. Sorry.
Anything further for Simon? Seeing none. Well, thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to the report coming back in June. Fantastic.
Thank you very much for the time, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a great day.
Thank you.
Alrighty then. Let's move us along. Mr. Kelly, take it away.
Thank you very much, Chair. And once again, good morning, committee. I am pleased to start item number 1 with Tina Poplinski, our media relations and social media coordinator, who is going to take a moment to step out from behind the camera today and address her activities since she last reported to committee.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of Finance and Administration Committee. I'm happy to, as Craig said, be before you here, not hiding in the back corner. I'm happy to just report on my communications activities. A lot of you obviously receive my media releases, but even when I was going over my numbers, it was interesting just to see what we have accomplished in the past 6 months. So as noted in my report, since September, I've prepared and written 16 media releases on county-related topics, and then reviewed and distributed an additional 10 releases prepared by other departments. There's a list of some of the topics there. If I go back to the beginning of this year, I was quite involved with the Marketing and Communications Committee for the Ontario Winter Games. So in that regard, I prepared 8 media releases on various topics and distributed an additional 6 releases prepared by other members of the committee. I was also quite involved with the social media for the games, and I was quite excited to be able to pick up my camera again and attend some actual events to take photos that were posted on social media. So going into the social media report here, I have gone a little deeper into the analytics from the last time I reported. So I chose the window from April 14th, 2022 to this past April 14th, the 1-year period, because that's sort of when I really began my posting on a daily basis on social media. So if you see here, the Facebook reach has increased 116% from the previous 1-year period. Instagram has increased by just over 50%, and Twitter reach has increased by 272,000. And then my followers are noted there. I did lose some on Instagram, but the visits and the reach has still increased, so I'll take that as a win. And I've noted some of my most popular posts on the platforms. The VTAC announcement was quite well received on all social media, as people are very invested in that program and realize the importance that it has in our community. And I did note also the YouTube statistics, which I've just recently got into actually creating the links for the meetings, thanks to Sean's assistance. And so I've noted all of the views, the times that people are watching the meetings, and the number of impressions overall. And I did note in the most recent 90-day period that there has been a marked increase, which is good. So that does, I hope, help that each morning of the committees, I do post the links on our social media to draw them to people's attention. And I think I'll leave it there. If there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. I'll go back to Mr. Kelly, please, for number 2.
Thank you, Chair. And again, so these type of, you'll see in many of our reports on a monthly or a quarterly or a semi-annual basis, we bring reports on statistics. So we'll continue with this key performance indicator with Tina's reports on a semi-annual basis to keep you informed of activities in that department. Item number 2 is a piece of information that stems from our employee survey, employee engagement survey that went out late last fall that we've talked to you about already. One of the main takeaways from that survey was our staff members were asking that our management and supervisory levels, including our directors, would receive more training. So through our relationship with a fantastic facilitator by the name of Dr. J.P. Gideon, we engaged his services for a day and brought, oh gosh, there was nearly 60 employees there, including all the supervisors, managers, and directors from across the corporation to get together and sit with one another and hear about Dr. Gideon's art of transformational leadership, which is highly inspiring. And I'm hoping that this will continue in their day-to-day and how they conduct themselves and conduct their own methodologies in working with their staff as they move forward. My predecessor had brought this to the county back in 2019, and unfortunately had a lot of this training truncated through the pandemic. So again, happy to bring it back forward and move forward with these teachings. Item number 3 is again a piece of information stemming from yesterday's health committee that Bonaire Manor will be moving forward on a portable phone replacement RFP, and wanted to make this committee aware that the health committee has recommended to County Council the reallocation of dollars to make this RFP fit within their budget for this year. And the same thing for item number 4 on a commercial laundry washer, that again, informing this committee that they had to work their budget and reallocate some dollars from one to another to make their procurement of a commercial laundry washer work for this year. I will stop before resolutions, Chair.
Thank you. So we will go back to item number 1. If anybody has any questions for Tina, she's hiding back there, but she's coming out. Yes, member from Laurentian Hills, please.
I'm always curious as to how you come up with percentages. And you mentioned Pembroke, Renfrew, Petawawa, Deep River. How about the rest of us?
So on the analytics, those were the only local communities that were actually noted, unfortunately. So that's all I could go by, what the reach that I do have. The Facebook audience does have some additional information. So in order of the number of people that do like our page on Facebook, it is Pembroke, Renfrew, Petawawa, Ottawa, Arnprior, Cobden, Eganville, Barry's Bay, Golden Lake, and Brayside. So I can only go by what the numbers. So that is, like I say, the number of likes we do have on our audience on Facebook. So I can only go by what the users or the people that do like our page. So
Supplementary.
So would this be by postal code?
I am not sure. That would be a little deeper than I could go. It's in the metaverse, so I'm not really sure.
That's fine. Okay, thank you.
Well, and to Anne's point, I would assume that Facebook, it would be, Jennifer Murphy lives in Eganville, Ontario, right? So you kind of have to go by that on Facebook. I'm not sure about Twitter.
Right. I'm assuming like Pembroke may include Laurentian Valley as well. Renfrew would include Horton, other areas within the geographical area that would be considered as the larger municipalities. So
that makes sense. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, because in Laurentian Hills, you don't always have the option as well. You have to choose Deep River. So we're lumped in there as well. Thank you.
They're your big brother. Member from Admiston Bromley, please.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair, and thank you through you to Ms. Popinski on the report. I think one of the things that jumped out at me is the growth that we are experiencing, and I think that is probably a direct result of having a more robust and repeating presence online. And I think increasingly that is how our community is receiving information. Do keep in mind what I would suggest is probably those that are on the north side of 60 years old. It begins to diminish their access, not their access, they have access to social media, but they tend to not have social media. So I think we do need to be careful about our messaging, that we continue with the legacy or traditional communications for those folks. But I did notice the same thing that my colleague from Laurentian Hills, and it seems kind of confounding, and I know that the mathematics is based on the total views, but ultimately the location of the views, when you combine all of those, which are incorporating the larger urban centers in the county of Renfrew, it's still only accounting for 10%. So 90% of the views are from somewhere other than these places. So it seems, and I'm understanding that this data, this analytics is not something that Ms. Popinski is working her way through. This is provided to us. But it does seem odd to me to be seeing that Pembroke, being the largest urban center within the geographic county of Renfrew, is under 10% of the views, and then it diminishes from there. Like at Renfrew, at less than 1% seems odd. In any event, I'm appreciative of the report, and I do certainly commend Ms. Popinski for a much more dynamic and robust presence online.
Well, and we are certainly seeing the need for more robust communication post-pandemic. I think people they're hungry for any information they can get. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. As I understand Google Analytics, I've spent some time with it, it's geospatially referenced to the server's location. So often you might be in Barry's Bay, but bouncing off a Rogers server that's fed off of Toronto or Ottawa or otherwise. So I think that's throwing the numbers off. So if it's Pembroke or somewhere else, it might be using InterTCO, for instance, which is a locally based, but if you're using Starlink, you might not be registered as anywhere in this country. So it is throwing some of the data off, but knowing from the comments I'm getting from around the areas, it's higher than you see here based on people watching the YouTube links and otherwise from local areas, analytically. Thank you.
Thank you. A member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Tina, I'd like to commend you for your efforts on this accomplishment to this point. You're walking through uncharted waters, and who knows where the future is going to take us, but I think we've got the right person leading us. Thank you.
I said to Tina yesterday, I thought this was a justification report to keep her. I was worried. Worried, I tell you. Oh, and it's like, yep, me too.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for your kind words, Councillor from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards. I appreciate it. And I should have mentioned also, I think part of my success is the other municipalities are very good to share the messaging that I'm putting out, so I believe that helps to expand the reach further through the county. Like I get a lot of notifications, particular municipalities sharing a lot of the messaging, which is very helpful. And I didn't mention it really too, but the emergency management aspect too is, I think I'm building some credibility for the county as sort of a trusted source with the flooding freshet information that I put out, and along with my these significant weather events through the winter too. And so like I say, I do appreciate the shares and things like that, and that has helped. So I hope if you bring that message back to your own municipalities that does help, and if that continues, it will help all of us to get the message across. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Tina. Great job. Anything further on 1? We will move on to 2, the management training. Member from Brudnell, Lindock, and Ragland, please.
Thank you, Chair. I believe that would have been a very interesting session. And thinking in the future, would it be possible for department heads and from local municipalities to partake in some of this training? Because I'm sure it would be very beneficial to them, and small municipalities, it maybe would be outside of their reach.
No, thank you for the question through you. It's a good question, and I'm not saying no. This was more about a cohesive approach to how we work together as an organization, as opposed to working with our local municipalities. There's also a numbers factor. If we include all that group, we'd get 100 and some people. It'd become a stadium type presentation. I don't think we'd get the same effect, but I can ask the facilitator on how it would work for a larger group on a similar topic, but dealt in a different fashion for the group intended, and he can fashion that, or any facilitator can fashion that, but we can definitely ask the question.
Okay, thank you. Anything further? Number 3, the portable phone replacement. Number 4, the big washer for Bonnechere Manor. All right, then we will move on to resolutions, please.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 5 is a resolution. You'll have recognized this resolution from your committees this week, but with your indulgence, I'll read the recommendation to get it into the record. That the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that County Council approve the following submission for delegation request for the Association of Municipalities Ontario Conference with the appropriate ministers. Item 1, not necessarily in order, the Solicitor General to discuss the financial challenges with respect to changes in the Provincial Offences Act policies. And the second item is the Minister of Municipal Affairs, a discussion and request to continue funding the Municipal Modernization Fund to address challenges and opportunities related to the shift in workplace demands resulting from post-pandemic workforce.
Thank you. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by the member from Brudnell, Lindock, and Ragland, second by the member from Laurentian Hills. Do you want to do a bit of, the background's there, but
I can touch on it a little bit. Thank you, Chair. So again, you recognize that we've spoken about many delegations this week. We are not under any delusion that we'll receive all of these delegations. It was described to me as a bit of a shotgun approach, but as you can understand, as with your own municipalities, we have several issues we would like to discuss with several ministers, and they've all been identified by committee on the following pages. However, for this individual committee, I think we've heard oftentimes about the disparity between charges laid and fines received, and the ongoing policies for them to, as Mr. Foss has pointed out, to almost wipe them from the docket and start afresh. So that will create a financial issue for us. And the second item, we've been very successful with this modernization fund. We've rolled out the digital strategy and have taken great advantage of it to modernize our workforce. And actually, your municipalities have as well. Anywhere from fire halls in Killu to new systems here in the county of Renfrew. So we are hopeful that the minister will listen to us or any of your municipalities on renewing that fund and allowing us to continue modernizing our workforce.
Thanks, great summary. Any questions? I have one. I think it would behoove us to also ask the Attorney General. I keep wanting to call him Doug Downey. No, Gord Downey, but it's Doug Downey. Yes, okay, Doug Downey. The portal for JPs is open on their website, but Renfrew County is not one of the municipalities that's listed in need, so I'll just throw that out there. Obviously, I can't make that motion, but yes, member from Aviston Bromley, please.
I'm wondering, the same thought had occurred to me, Madam Chair. So I have open right now, I'm not sure if this is the portal to which you referred, but this is on the Attorney General, the MAG website, which is citing the vacancies. And the County of Renfrew is not on here. There are quite a number of communities on here, both urban and rural. Perhaps these are based on actually on towns or cities. I don't see a specific township or county named here, but I note that Renfrew County is not here, and I'm wondering what the status is of justices of the peace in Renfrew County, like how many vacancies there are. Are there vacancies here? That's what I'm looking at, is the citation on the MAG website of JP vacancies.
And we were given a report at Roma. I can pull it up because the report does list the communities with vacancies that the portal is looking for applications. But Mr. Foss or Mr. Kelly, how many JPs do we need here?
Thank you for the question, Madam Chair, and through you to committee. That's a little bit more difficult in today's environment simply because we have the ability to operate virtual courts. So although we are assigned a number of justices of the peace for this East region, our contention has always been that if that's not possible or available, we're not sure what the difficulty, challenge, reluctance is in assigning a JP from another geographic location in Ontario to operate our court virtually. You know, there's certainly still that shortage. I think the replacement that took place when our municipal prosecutor, Jennifer Grant, was appointed as a JP to the East region, I think there was a shortage of 42 at that time in Ontario. And so that those appointments helped to alleviate that shortfall. But since that point in time, we've had a number of additional vacancies, retirements, if you will. So I don't have the current number that we are short. And so I guess our contention is that operating in a virtual court session, I think, sort of eliminates that geographic shortage, if you will, in our mind at least.
So the ones that are cited are Brampton, Chatham, Goderich, Hamilton, Kingston, Kitchener, Lindsay, London, Newmarket, Ottawa, Sioux Lookout, St. Kitts, Sudbury, Toronto, Thunder Bay, Welland, Windsor, and Woodstock, but not Renfrew County. So I would eagerly accept a motion, and perhaps what Mr. Foss said, where is maybe the delegation has to go so far as to say, where's the reluctance in using a JP from Windsor? They don't have to be here. Interesting. Yes, go ahead, Craig.
Chair, I would suggest you don't necessarily need another motion. We've left it fairly broad on this one, that we can include your comments. We've captured them today, and we'll include them in that when we submit to them, we'll include some of this background to them in the paragraph. We didn't want to include the entire paragraph for each delegation request to committee. So we will, I think that is, although it's financial changes, it is changes in their own policies that have gone to a portal. I think that was a new policy that was brought forward not too long ago about a virtual portal. But if you want to entertain more, we can do more.
But the AG isn't even listed as one of the...
You are correct. Yeah, we have been reporting our reports to the Solicitor General and not to the Attorney General. But if you like a separate one, I will obviously listen to
I would say that Minister Downey was extremely engaging at the Roma conference with regard to this, and I did manage to give him a heads up because Michael and I happened to be having lunch and he was sitting right there. So I did give him the heads up, but then afterwards he came over during the reception and he did want to talk about it. So I think we just need to nudge him and remind him we're here north of 7. Member from Aveston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I will certainly suggest that the Chair is correct, Mr. Kelly, as this is a resolution and the Ministry of the Attorney General is not cited as one of the potentials, then it would require an amendment. But in terms of how our community is being served, I certainly note Mr. Foss's comments that through the virtual realm, that we can make a dent into the backlog of cases, et cetera, that is building not just in our community, but right across the province, given the diminished number of JPs. However, having said that, I also have some significant reservations that we're going to have remote justice. I think that we have demonstrated that there is a workload within the administration of justice within the county of Renfrew that would warrant there being a justice present here or multiple justices present here. And I am somewhat concerned and anxious should we be accessing justice through the virtual on an ongoing, on a permanent basis. I think with respect to the backlog, with respect to pandemic issues, et cetera, that we had to make adjustments, adapt to those environments. Moving forward, though, I am not at all comfortable that this community would be served by someone that is not of this community, is not familiar with this community. I get that this is a provincial system, but I scarcely think that any of the larger centres would be satisfied if justice was being meted out in the City of Toronto by a justice that is sitting downstairs in this building, nor am I if those roles are reversed. So I think that if that is perhaps notionally within the Ministry of the Attorney General a path forward, I would suggest to them in a delegation that I think that their path is fraught.
Okay, I'm picking up what you're putting down. Are you willing to make a motion to amend this recommendation?
I would move that the Ministry of the Attorney General be added to the list of delegation requests, specifically as it pertains to justices of the peace and the availability of justices physically within the county of Renfrew.
Decent. Can I have a seconder? The member from North Algona-Wilberforce. Any other discussion? Excellent. All in favor? Thanks for that, guys. I just think it's really important. Like, we've been talking about this since James sat over there.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Yeah.
Mr. Kelly, I'm assuming that I moved an amendment that should be approved, and then ultimately the resolution itself would be?
My apologies, because I did get a mover and seconder for the, I'm sorry. Just throw something at me. You've messed up my day. Sorry, so we'll go back to the original recommendation. All in favor? I can't remember who moved and seconded it. Oh, and okay. All in favor? Thank you. All right, now we can move on to the business case.
Again, thank you, Chair. Item number 6 is a business case that has made its way through the Health Committee yesterday. So I will read that into recommendation or into the record. That the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that County Council approve that the Health Committee administrative duties be returned to the Long-Term Care and Emergency Service Administrative Assistants, consistent with duties assigned prior to August 2021. And further, that the Long-Term Care Homes and Emergency Services Administrative Assistant 2 positions be reclassified to Administrative Assistant 3 positions consistent with the Gallagher Report ratings and Employment Bylaw Number 1 non-union staff salary grid.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder, please. Moved by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce, seconded by the member from Abbotston Bromley. A little bit of background.
Thank you, Chair. The bit of background was we have, through an analysis of our administrative twos that currently support our 2 directors, Mr. Blackmore and Chief Nolan, and the administrative 3 that's currently supporting committees, as witnessed yesterday throughout the day, and Ms. Lapine. Just in order of trying to reallocate work so it's a little more effective and a little more equally balanced, we are looking to reclassify the 2 positions back to essentially what they once were and spread the duties around for committees and council reports moving forward.
Thank you. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor? And we will move on to number 7, please.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 7 is a change of meeting date request for County Council. And the recommendation to be read into the record is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that the date for the June regular meeting of County Council be changed to June 22nd, 2023 at 10 a.m.
Can I have a mover and seconder, please, to get it on the floor? Moved by the member from Brunel, Lindock and Raglan, seconded by the member from Laurentian Hills. Discussion. Member from Abbotston Bromley, please.
First, Madam Chair, process through you to Mr. Kelly. As unlike at council, where the individual resolutions are not addressed one at a time, as they are here in committee, presumably this does not have to be removed from or severed from the report as it is being dealt with almost as a standalone unto itself. Is that correct?
That's how I would interpret that, sir.
Okay, so it does not need to be severed. Okay. Fair enough. So my comments on this is I am not in favor of this, Madam Chair, and through you to the committee. Our procedural bylaw has already anticipated precisely this situation at Section 10, which reads, in the absence, in fact, the Section 10 heading is absence of the presiding officer. A, should the presiding officer not be in attendance within 15 minutes after the time for a fixed meeting of council, or where the presiding officer has advised that he/she will not be attending, the clerk shall call the members to order and a presiding officer will be appointed from among the members present. So our procedural bylaw already makes provision for this. Our thoroughly debated and argued and finally adopted electronic participation in council meetings. I'll read you that as well. Section 6.1A4. A member may participate electronically whereas scheduling conflict that would not allow a member to attend at the meeting location. So we have extended substantial latitude for attendance. We have anticipated in our procedural bylaw the means whereby a presiding officer could preside. The reason that I'm opposed to this is because it is the body that is the effective agency here. No member here shall take priority or precedence over any other. I would not expect for council to change to accommodate my schedule or for anybody else's. I certainly recognize the role of the warden within the County of Renfrew, but the warden is the first amongst equals. So in this instance, I think that it is frankly an affront to our procedural bylaw and in fact our procedures that there is a change made for everyone to accommodate an individual, and regardless of who the individual is in this instance, I do not think that that is appropriate, and I think that there is a means whereby should the warden be able to attend virtually, that capacity is there. With respect to the presiding role, I recognize that the warden is essentially the speaker, if you will, of county council, but almost everybody in this room has familiarity with presiding over a council meeting. So I think that there it is a relatively small role actually as the warden's responsibilities and obligations are required within our procedures. So I am certainly not in favor of amending ours to simply accommodate a single member of council.
Thank you. Member from Laurentian Hills, please.
There is a conflict here for the environmental stewardship meeting hosted by CNL. It's the all-day meeting there, and it's open to all the delegates and their alternates.
Thank you for letting us know. Any other comments? Yes, Warden.
Thank you, and I apologize for being out of the chambers. I've been waiting on a call from someone and I had to take it. It wasn't an easy request to make, but I feel that June is traditionally a very heavy meeting. There's always things coming forward, usually a slew of tenders and then also some policy things, and I can't predict with certainty that'll happen, but it always seems to be a long meeting and a heavy meeting, and sometimes things come up at the last minute, and I do believe that, under the Act, is the head of council has a responsibility to offer advice to council. I take that very seriously, and I recognize, that it's unusual, and wanted to make sure that I had a fulsome conversation and debate at committee and at council, rather than just arbitrarily making a decision, which, I think the procedural bylaw would have allowed. I don't think that's the right thing to do. So I think as leaders in our own community, we try to, accommodate the overall schedule of the corporation. But there are times when changes have to occur, and it's not something you do lightly. And given, I think a commitment to openness, bring it to this forum and then to county council for conversation. And then also, I think as the head of council, I have a responsibility to try and be on site, and I think I have for the most part and will be. But it's unfortunate that a scheduling issue happened that I have no control over. And I would appreciate committee and council, if not this date, another date, recognizing what the councillor from Laurentian Hills has said. Maybe it's as simple as amending it to the following day, the Friday. But I would appreciate the consideration of council or committee and council for the change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything further on this item? Yes, member from Aviston Bromley.
Just in following up to Ward Nemo's comments, Madam Chair, I think that it's irrelevant what the potential workload, if you will, of the meeting is, and I think that it becomes a side issue then if it's. What I would submit is the monthly meeting of the council for the county of Renfrew. Every single one of them is important, and ultimately June may be heavy, but I think that the capacity of all of the members present, I would like to certainly suggest and believe that my voice is crucial on every issue that falls to the council for the county of Renfrew. But this county existed before I got here, and it will continue to exist when I am no longer coming here. There are a lot of faces out in that lobby right there, and this is not a personal issue with respect to Warden Emo. It could be any one of those faces on the wall up there, and I would be saying the same thing to them that I am saying here, is that you are the first among equals, but you are among equals. And I recognize that any one of us, as I vociferously debated, unsuccessfully with respect to electronic participation, but the choice is within ourselves as to which shall be our primary obligation and responsibility. And to each one of us, what is primary is absolutely an individual decision, but that should be remain the individual decision and not subject to an imposition on the body itself.
Okay, thank you for that. Any further discussion? Warden, please.
I would suggest if I take that line of reasoning, that precludes the ability of the warden or council to call a special council meeting, and that seems to fly in opposition to what we do on a regular basis. So I'm just a comment. Thank you.
I will say, though, this CAO has really cut down our special meetings before county council. I know. It's it's a fool's errand. Yes, member from Aviston Bromley, please.
I think that I perhaps can address Ward Nemo's concern with respect to that. Is in fact, it is legitimate to put in front of committee right now saying that even the recommendation here, it does not state it, but it is inferring that we set aside our procedural bylaw. We have in the past had to set aside our procedural bylaw. Usually it was done on the spur of the moment. The most recent one I think that I can recall was the meeting in March of 2019 because of the rapidly advancing global pandemic. So we have by times voted to suspend the rules of procedure, but our rules of procedure already tell us what to do here. What I would submit is that our meetings are on the last Wednesday of every month. Outside of those times, I would suggest, when quorum potentially is threatened because of municipal conferences, et cetera, I think that at the very least by precedent, I could not explain what the basis of the inclusion of a particular element that says or at the call of the chair or the warden. But absolutely the intent of that is not to be able to arbitrarily change the standing meeting of the County of Council. It is to respond to events of the day and we do need to have that relief valve that issues may come upon us that are going to absolutely require the input of council, and additional special meetings must be called. This is not a special meeting. This is a request to move our standing meeting that outside of conflicts with municipal conferences since I got here in December of 2014 have been on the final Wednesday of every month, but for the inaugural meeting in December. And this would be an abusive process, whether it would be this warden or any other, to suggest that that clause is included so as to adjust the meeting date to accommodate, in this instance in particular, the warden themselves.
Anything further on this item? Yes, Warden.
Yes, I'd like to suggest an amendment to June 23rd.
So that would be the Friday.
Yes.
So I'll just ask, are the mover and seconder okay with the change to the 23rd? I think that's truly a friendly amendment. Yeah, okay. Then I will call for the vote. All in favor? 1, 2, 3, 4. Opposed? Okay, that passes. But it'll be the Friday. I don't think it's good for me, but that's, I'm on the fly here now. I mean, the warden checked with me when he wanted to change it, because we were trying to figure out, how many people had meetings on Thursdays and, were we going to have quorum? But you're right about CNL. Okay, we'll move on to Odo.
Actually, Madam Chair, can I ask a question? I'm curious if all of the other council, we are aware, every council member is aware that the last Wednesday of the month is the meeting. So we have, eight members of county council here? So there are 9 members of county council that aren't here. So if in fact they could make the 28th but can't make the new date, how will we justify that?
It's a good question. It is a recommendation going to county council, though. But I think that there'll probably be a fulsome discussion at county council as well. And you're not wrong. I mean, some of us may go back to our calendars and go, I'm already booked that Friday for Eorn or what have you. Sorry, did the member from Deep River have something? You're just giggling over there. Yeah, but I mean, it's a recommendation that's going to county council. It hasn't been ratified, so we will see at the end of the month. And with that, the Health Team Reserve, Mr. Kelly.
Okay, item number 8 is an item to deal with the Ottawa Valley Ontario Health Team Reserve. So to get it on the floor, again, the recommendation is that the Finance and Administration Committee recommend that County Council approve that the amount of $145,562.50 be transferred to the Ottawa Valley Ontario Health Team, or the OVOHT Reserve, for use of the OVOHT Steering Committee, consistent with the provisions outlined in the transfer payment agreement.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder to get it on the floor, please. Moved by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce, seconded by the member from Deep River. A little bit of background, please.
Thank you, Chair. So the bit of a background is that there was some a bit of a surplus, if you will, or some unspent dollars from the previous years, and we're just looking, as per regular practice, as we move that surplus into our reserve for future use by the OVHT as the banker, for lack of a better term, of the OVHT.
Excellent. Thank you for that. Discussion. Seeing none. Oh, I'm sorry, Warden.
I'm curious, is there any constraints on this funding, or will the Ontario Health Team constantly get money and just be allowed to bank it for a future? Because it seems to be an unusual practice that, especially in the municipal world, and I think in some of our agreements, we have to send money back. So I'm a little curious about that. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to the warden. So the County of Renfrew signed an agreement with the Province of Ontario to act really as a banker for the funds, certainly participating as a member of the team itself, of the committee. But we are really we're operating under the resolution and direction of that particular board. And so their determination that their allocation of $170,000 in administrative fees, which since they are not yet operating perhaps as the province intends the health teams in a more fulsome way to operate, they are experiencing surpluses and unspent administrative dollars. And so it is that resolution of that board and that direction of that board to place those unused funds into a reserve. That's a restricted reserve for us because it's not our money. We will hold on to those dollars, or in this case, add those to last year's identified surplus of $65,000, and we'll hold on to that money until we are further directed by that health team to expend those monies again on a restricted basis and only to be used to support the plans and directions of that Ontario Health team. So yes, you are correct. It is unusual, and very often when we have, we've got a significant number of provincial programs that are operating here at the County of Renfrew, and in every case, any unspent subsidy dollars are held as an accounts payable, and then they are either paid back to or they are actually recovered by the Province of Ontario following the end of our reporting cycles to them. So quite unusual, but we are at the direction of that particular committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Member from Mr. Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and perhaps, I would seek Mr. Kelly's guidance. I'm assuming Mr. Kelly has taken the seat formerly held by the preceding CAO. As I understand, this is not program funding. This is essentially the Ontario Health Team is still in a steering position. They are in the midst of creating and standing up the Ontario Health Team as that broader entity, and that these funds are intended towards that effort. It's my understanding that these are not program funding for programs that the Ontario Health Team has designated as their priorities, et cetera. As I understood it, that's what the County of Renfrew was acting as the banker, if you will, was simply in the establishment of the Ontario Health Team. Mr. Kelly, am I off base?
Thank you, Chair, and through you to Councillor Donahue. That is correct. I think what you're seeing is the team, and Mr. Burke sits on the financial enabling team. I sit on a number of different committees as well. The surplus was created because a lot of activities. I mean, there's a fundamental difference between programs and activities, but they're activities that hadn't begun yet in 2022, 2023. Hiring of a media communications person and some other rollout of other program activities that they wanted to do, and that has created a surplus in these funds. It hasn't evolved to that full health team, as you can imagine. The steering committees, there are several of them, are still meeting on a regular basis and defining their activities moving forward.
Supplementary member from Edmonton Brownlee.
Yeah, and thank you, Madam Chair, and through you, appreciation to Mr. Kelly. I just wanted to, I think it's important at all times to keep that kind of firewall perspective, if you will. At the time that this new health regime, health structure for Ontario was being rolled out, there was much concern that the Ontario health teams were going to supplant the local health integration networks as the vehicles through which funding allocations were made. So I wanted to be quite clear that at some point in this process, it was articulated that that's not on the horizon right now. I don't know what the mechanism is, whether that has devolved back to the Ministry of Health. But at this point, as I'm understanding it, the Ontario health teams are not going to be the decision-making bodies as to which particular healthcare provider within the area, the aegis of each OHT, is going to be receiving their funding. So I think it's important to, and I'm thinking that might perhaps have been the basis of Warden Emo's question, so I'm uncertain. But I think it is important to keep that in mind. At this point, the OHTs are not making the funding allocations to other health sectors under the OHT.
Good point. Anything further on 8? I will call for the vote. All in favor? And the report as a whole, may I have a mover and seconder, please? Moved by the member from Laurentian Hills, seconded by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce. Anything further on the admin report? Seeing none, all in favor? Wonderful, and I think that's probably a good place to stop and have a break. I'm getting the nod from Fosse over here, so we will take a 10-minute break. We'll see you back here at 10 after 11.
Oh.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. We will now move to Mr. Foss with the Corporate Services Department report found on page 11 of your report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as you said, on page 11, item number 1 under information is council remuneration. So we have provided for you a statement of remuneration and expenses paid to County Council as at March the 31st, 2023. Item number 2 is the Treasurer's report, and as directed by Council in a previous meeting, we are bringing forth quarterly financial statements to all committees, and including Finance and Admin Committee. So we have our one-page financial summary, which leads the Treasurer's reports for the General Revenue Fund, Bonnechere Manor, Miramichi Lodge, our Public Works, as well as the Renfrew County Housing Corporation. Item number 3, under provincial offenses workload, you will notice workload activities for January through till April, the first 4 months of the year. And certainly looking at March and April, we are trending in around 8,700, 8,800 annual charges, and we'll talk about that a little bit later on as I go through the balance of the report, but that remains the level of activity within our Provincial Offences Court. Item number 4, again, on a monthly basis, we bring forward to this committee a chart which is really kind of indicating backlog within our Provincial Offences Court. You will note that in the month of April, we had 5 courts originally scheduled, and 2 of them were canceled. And that really follows a pattern that we've seen for the last number of years. 40% of all of our court days are being canceled by the regional senior justice of the peace, and again, it is in relation to the number of justices that are available to hold those court sessions. And you'll notice that we have a total of 1,261 charges that are in backlog, or we would consider them to be in backlog. And given the current number of court days that we have, we estimate we would need 52 court days to remove this backlog in its entirety, which at only a couple of court sittings per month would take us 17 months to clear that backlog. Item number 5, on a related matter, in January, our committee reviewed workload statistics within the Provincial Offences Administration section of the report, and noticed that although there was an increase in total charges in 22 compared to 2021, they are still well below the pre-COVID levels. And so committee asked that the warden send a letter to the Solicitor General inquiring about this significant decrease, and specifically the resolution that Warden Emon send a letter to the Honourable Michael Kersner, Solicitor General, seeking clarification on the number of fines being dispensed in the County of Renfrew during 2022. And on April the 13th, we received a response from Inspector Steph Neufeld, Detachment Commander, Upper Ottawa Valley Provincial Police, which we have attached for you as Appendix 4. Item number 6 is really a response to a request that we had in our March Finance Committee meeting about investigating the possibility for county councillors to join the Ontario OMERS pension system. And so we have attached for you as Appendix 5, which is found on page number 44, a section of the OMERS manual which deals specifically with the ability for councillors to join the OMERS pension plan. And Madam Chair, I'll just maybe perhaps direct Council's attention to that page number 44 under the Employer Admin Manual, and just the 3rd paragraph down, a council can choose to enroll all council members in the plan, including the head of council or the head of council only. Council members without the head of council cannot enroll in the OMERS plan. Next, under existing council members, at the effective date of council enrollment, existing council members can individually choose to enroll in the plan. A council member who does not enroll on the effective date can choose to enroll at a later date. New council members, and this one is fairly key, After the effective date of council enrollment, any new or future council member must enroll in the plan. And those are essentially the same rules that we have as an OMERS employer for all continuous full-time employees, that once they are hired by the County of Renfrew as a full-time employee, and we are an OMERS member, we must enroll them immediately in the plan. And so the actions by the current council, if you were to choose to go in this direction, are certainly binding future council members, so they all must enroll in the OMERS plan. Item 7.2 toward the bottom of the page really talks about the steps in the process. If a decision is made to go in this way, by contacting OMERS and really indicating the intent to participate, OMERS providing us a number of template bylaws that must be enacted in order for the County of Renfrew to move forward in this direction. This council must pass a bylaw authorizing participation and the effective date, sending a certified copy to OMERS, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The enrollment process essentially is the same for, as I mentioned, continuous full-time employees here at the County of Renfrew. Contributory earnings. A council member's contributory earnings are defined in OMERS as taxable money paid to the councillor for the councillor's services as a councillor under the Municipal Act. Talks a little bit about some of the CRA changes that have taken place that really are no longer impacting us as far as non-taxable allowance, because that was removed by the CRA a number of years ago. And so based on contributory earnings for councillor members, then contribution rates, the rates for council members and the pension plan benefits earned by council members are the same for other OMERS normal retirement age members. And currently, that is a contribution to OMERS of 9% of all of council's earnings up to the YMPE, the year's maximum pensionable earnings, which is $66,600 for 2023. So for members of council, you would all be contributing at this 9% level. For the warden, who has earnings in excess of $66,600, then all of those excess dollars, then the contribution rate is 14% of those earnings in excess of the YMPE. And just some other rules at the end about council members who may already be a member of OMERS and in receipt of OMERS pension benefits cannot receive pension and contribute to the pension plan at the same time. So those are rules that, again, are identical for county staff or any full-time continuous members working anywhere in Ontario, members of the OMERS pension plan. So I just thought I would highlight some of those issues with respect to OMERS. And Madam Chair, perhaps before I move into bylaws, I would stop there.
Yes, please. Thank you. We'll go back to information item number 1, council remuneration. Number 2, the treasurer's report. Member from North Algona Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question, and it's in regards to the community services on page 17, where there's a variance from the budget to actual of $239,000. And I'm just wondering if that has something to do with the change in service that the province is planning, and will it affect services to clients?
No, thank you, Madam Chair, and through you to our member. Essentially, the position is really the timing of the payments, benefit payments to recipients of Ontario Works. It's not dealing with the administration envelope, if you will, and so that will certainly be rectified as the months move forward. Thank you.
Further on the treasurer's report. Member from Amaston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Certainly recognize that the Q1 Treasurer's Report is some pretty thin information. We're only 3 months into the year. From this, you cannot glean, I think, even any trends. Q2 is not that dissimilar. But just within this one, I just wanted to note, this is on the, I think it's perhaps the easiest to see, it's on the financial summary page on page 17 of your report. I just note that it's showing almost a $600,000 deficit variance on the county levy budgeted revenue to actual. And it is certainly, this reporting is at variance to all other Q1 reports back through 2015, because in fact, in the first column, committee will note the budget for Q1 was $12,635,096. That is in fact 25% of the 2022 levy. That is what any of us at the lower tier as the tax collectors levy for. In our first two billings, it is 50% of last year's taxes. So that $12 million budgeted line was precisely what would be anticipated to come. So this actually Q1 Treasurer's report is the first time that it shows a deficit. In all previous Q1 reports, the monies received and budgeted were precisely that 25%. So I think that $600,000 is more a deficit on our levy revenues, is more a reflection of having changed our approach to that. What is showing as the year-to-date budget would be 25% of our actual for 2023, rather than the 25% of actual from 2020 of actual from 2022. So that will presumably by Q3 will have disappeared. But in fact, if one removes that 600,000, then the overall corporate surplus is over $800,000.
Thank you for that. Yes, it should even itself out by Q3. Anything further on the Treasurer's report? Seeing none, I'll move ahead to the POA workload. I see none. The POA backlog. The POA, the charges received on the letter back from Staff Sergeant Neufeld, they could use a proofreader for their letters. Even COVID is spelled incorrectly. Not sure what that's all about. Yes, member from Amherst Bromley.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I'm certainly thankful to Inspector Neufeld for being delegated the task of responding. And I will note at the outset, if one extrapolates from earlier in the report, we are on pace to get back up about to what the average was established in those 4 years prior to COVID. So there has been some changes. We will see how that plays out over the balance of the year. However, I just, and I was not disposed towards engaging. It was the underlining, the emphasis that was added to the OPP does not issue tickets or carry out enforcement as a revenue-generating activity. I think that warrants a response. That was not part of the discussion here whatsoever. I was quite clear on that as being perhaps the most vocal with respect to the diminishing metadata, and all we have to reflect that are the number of charges. That is the data that we are seeing. So it was not with respect whatsoever with the revenue line. It was with respect to the enforcement of laws, and I'm even in the sentence following that one that was advising that this is not a revenue generator. It notes that the Upper Ottawa Valley OPP, and that is specific to the Upper Valley, and our discussion was not with respect to a single detachment. It was with respect to the overall charges that were showing up. It may not even have been OPP. For that matter, provincial offenses could be the MTO enforcement, commercial carrier enforcement. It could be the wardens, MNR folks. So it's not restricted to OPP broadly or specifically to the Upper Ottawa Valley. But I certainly will say that if what is identified here as maintaining a high number of ride checks, focus on commercial motor vehicles, and targeted patrols in areas where speeding was identified as a concern, either through analytics or public complaints, we have heard repeatedly in this chamber discussion of what appears to be, and it is anecdotal, but certainly from the members present, we have repeatedly heard of speeding concerns and growing speeding concerns, and apparently a more prevalent speeding within our communities. So I'd say if there are increased targeted patrols responding to concerns, it has not been reflected in the charges that have been laid. Having said all of those, I will repeat where I started at just under 2,700 charges having come forward in Q1. It is on target to reestablish that average, pre-COVID average, that was just slightly under 11,000. It is on target for that. So perhaps something has changed within the enforcement, be it OPP or any of the other enforcement agencies.
Thank you for that. And I noted too, when I was reading my package, like, why is it only UOV when we have other detachments? And in fact, the Deep River, and I know they talk about Deep River, but we have other detachments in the county of Renfrew. I'm just wondering why this filtered down only to UOV. I'm getting a shrug over here. Yes, Warden.
Thank you. Inspector Neufeld reached out to me and came and met with me prior to sending his response, and he was tasked to speak on behalf of the district rather than have several letters come back to us. And so he was asked to do that just as a matter of saving time and making sure that we received the information in a timely manner. And secondly, with regard to the line about issue tickets for revenue, I think the focus in our motion when it mentioned fines seemed to generate that response. So, but he wanted to be clear that it wasn't, it wasn't something that was a debate or an attempt to diminish council's concerns. So, and they are getting back to policing. The COVID, as with any organization, struck hard in terms of manpower and focusing on specific areas of enforcement, and so they are broadening. Their manpower is starting to stabilize in terms of people coming into the various detachments, and then also in terms of returning to work. Because as did every organization, they had staff that had to be at home due to COVID restrictions or family health issues. They weren't immune to that as well, and so they are getting back to their traditional model of policing and enforcement, and he just wanted to let council know that, and that he didn't want to send a several-page letter. He tried to respond specifically to the concern on behalf of the detachments. So it was a nice, cordial, and informative meeting, and he was very very hopeful that some of the mental health initiatives that are coming down into the communities would also free up some of the officer time to get back to the enforcement model that they've had in the past.
Thank you. Anything further? We'll move on to number 6, OMERS. Alrighty then.
Oh,
and
a perk given and a perk taken away. I'm already on OMERS. Thank you.
And we'll move on to bylaws, but we are going to refer to what is on your desk, not what is in your package. And I have been assured by Connie that the actual bylaw has been amended as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So moving on then to the document really that was placed on your desk this morning, which is a amended item number 7 from the report. So to Madam Chair, I will read the recommendations to get them into the record. The first recommendation that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that the amended Corporate Policy E11 flexible work arrangements be approved effective July 1, 2023, And further, that a bylaw to amend bylaw 6303, being a bylaw to establish human resource corporate policies and procedures for the County of Renfrew, be adopted. Madam Chair, should I continue with the second?
Yeah, you might as well do both. Yeah.
And secondly, a recommendation that the new corporate policy J-06, return of service incentive program, be received in draft and approved in principle, and that staff be directed to bring the policy back to committee and council for adoption pending a review by legal counsel.
Thank you. I'll ask for a mover and seconder to get it on the floor. Moved by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, seconded by the warden. Yeah, now you can give a bit of background. Oh, you want both of them?
Yeah, but we can talk about the first one, then you do the second one after.
All right, let's talk about the first one first.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the first being E11, flexible work arrangements. And again, really referencing sort of our foundational process, which was in the fall of 2022, under the direction of the CAO, the Human Resources Division launched an employee engagement survey to capture feedback from our employees on their County of Renfrew working experience. One of the themes, certainly, that emanated from that process was that of alternative work arrangements. In addition to that, during the development of our strategic plan in the month of January of this year, I think we saw loud and clear that there were many indications that staffing and workforce development was certainly going to be a significant item moving forward from a strategic planning perspective. So in response to some of these initiatives, we are putting forward this amended E11 flexible work arrangement policy on a one-year trial basis. And certainly we are indicating an approved start date be July the 1st of 2023. But again, with the concept that would be on a one-year trial basis with the intention to bring back a report through this committee and county council, really summarizing our experience at the end of this trial basis and then seeking direction on where we go from there, whether to make this a permanent policy and a permanent work arrangement or whether the trial period comes to an end. So beginning really on page 48, you will see page number 1, the policy statement, really just kind of laying out the reasons behind us moving in this direction. The policy definitions of each of these types of work arrangements are on page number 49, those being remote work, where employees have the ability to work from an alternate work location that is not a County of Renfrew work location. Secondly, flex time being where employees work their regular daily and or weekly hours, but outside of our regular start and end times for each day, which would typically be an 8 to 4 office day. And then finally, number 3, compressed work week. And that being an option where employees work a longer day in exchange for a reduction in the number of working days in a pay period, while still working the standard number of hours for their position during that pay period. So those are the 3 options and alternates. Highlighting the top of page number 50, this process would be on an application basis where an employee must demonstrate to their manager and to their director their ability to actually carry on the full scope of their duties, full workload, if you will. We understand that this may not be available to all staff, and we certainly have staff that don't have the option to look into some alternate work arrangements because of the nature of their job. While not an exhaustive list, the following bullets really on page number 50 would be those that we would consider during this application process. Nature of the duties, responsibilities of the position, operational demands that are on that department, potential for disruptions with communication, operations, productivity, or service delivery, And certainly, as I mentioned, the supervisor and department heads, at their discretion, they may consider the following factors when assessing the application that's coming up from the employee. One of the things that we talked about with respect to the alternate work arrangements, specifically the one option, which is remote work, is that we're not looking for this to cost the County of Renfrew any implementation dollars. So unlike the pandemic, when staff were really required to not come into the office, but to work from home, we had this, in several cases, we had to look at what is the environment where you'll be working. You know, do you have an appropriate setting, an appropriate desk, a chair that's not going to create some future difficulties ergonomically for you? Do you have the technology that's available at home? In other words, do you have broadband that is sufficient speed, upload and download speeds, which will allow you to do the full elements of your job from a remote work location? All of those things would, again, be part of the application process that the employee would go through in order to demonstrate that I have the ability to do my job, at least on a hybrid basis from a remote location, in that their County of Renfrew does not have to spend any implementation money to make this happen. So it's not like our response to the pandemic. Certainly on page 53, we talk a little bit about revoking or altering the flexible work arrangement once it is in place, and we certainly highlight a number of reasons, causal reasons, why we would revoke or alter a flexible work arrangement. And the last bullet point is certainly key for us. The County of Renfrew deems it necessary to alter or withdraw approval for the arrangement in its sole discretion. So giving the County of Renfrew that type of flexibility to be able to indicate that this is not meeting our needs as an organization and we need to end this process. Just wanted to highlight, beginning on page number 57, we have an information guidebook, and the first 9 pages certainly are the policy itself. But the implementation guide is really what's going to direct our discussions between managers and employees who are applying for these options. There is an application form. You can see there's certainly a great amount of detail that's gone into an explanation of what each one of these categories are. Whether or not it applies to you, and how you go through the process of demonstrating that this works for me and this suits, and I will be able to continue to perform all of my job duties. There's a really good Q&A section in here so that employees have a really good understanding of what we are proposing prior to even making the application. Perhaps, Chair, I might just leave it at that to open it up for other questions and discussion. I just want to say a special thank you to Mr. Belmore and the entire Human Resources team who have worked quite hard at this project, and I thought did an excellent job of getting this document in front of us today. So thank you, Chair.
Yeah, seriously, good job, Greg. This must have been a lot of work, and to know that it's not just willy-nilly, like Mr. Davis wakes up on a Monday morning and goes, you know what, I think I'm just going to work from home today. So I'm happy to know, sorry to pick on you, Jason, but just, you know, to know that there's a process in place and that there are parameters. But yeah, I will open it up to discussion. A member from North Algonah Wilberforce, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I just want to echo what you're saying. I do appreciate certainly the amount of time and work that went into creating this whole process. My concern is when I went through the document, and I appreciate what Mr. Foss is saying, that there's supposed to be no cost to the county. To me, there will be a cost in staff time. And if even half of the employees apply for a flex time, that's going to eat up a lot of the managers and HR staff time to go through the whole process to evaluate each one. Thank you.
Was your plan to sort of do it by department? So corporate services would take care of corporate service people? Public Works would take care of when those plow operators want to work from home?
Thank you, Chair. And that's exactly the design of the program. Rather than to build some rigidity into the process and make it a one-size-fits-all, because we understand clearly that that's not the nature of our business. And so what may work for the folks in the Human Resources Department may not be the same for economic development or for planning or for information technology. And so we wanted to ensure that it was a discussion, an application and a discussion one-on-one between the manager and the employee who is applying for one of these options, to ensure that at that level, each of them clearly understood what the county needs from the arrangement and what the employee is willing and able to provide. And so we may, like your example of a snowplow operator, have staff who it really does not meet our operational requirements to have flexible work arrangements for some of these staff, certainly alternate work. But is there ability for a compressed work week for public work staff? Is there ability for a flex time for some of the public work staff? And I think rather than attempting corporately to make those decisions from a single centralized office, if you will, really not understanding the nuances of each one of our departments and how we deliver our services, those decisions are best made and those discussions are best held between those departmental managers and staff, supervisors, directors who really understand the business and are there to protect at the supervisor level the interests of the organization, the delivery of our services to our clients, ensuring that those will not be negatively impacted by any of the decisions we're moving forward. So we're very cognizant of that, we're very aware of that, and at the same time we recognize the environment that we are in from a recruiting and retention point of view, and not wanting to lose out on the opportunity that we may have to be an employer of choice here in the county of Renfrew, and lose out on some really good qualified staff who may have other opportunities to work in more flexible environments, and using that as the decision not to come to the county of Renfrew.
I think also some of the onus is on the employee. So, I mean, if I know that I don't have the capacity, or I've got, 5 barking dogs at home that I can't contain, I mean, some of this has to go back to, here, employees, here is the plan, and if you think that you can meet all the criteria without getting into a whole HR nightmare, I think that there's a lot of merit in this plan. Anything further on the first recommendation? Warden, please.
I'm glad to see, that we're trying to define it, because I think it's important. As the director noted, during COVID, it was a bit of a freewheeling environment because we had to redevelop in about 7 minutes to make sure we could carry on operations. And I think at that time, everybody was cognizant that it was going to take a concerted effort because of the seismic shift that's resulted from COVID, but also the change in the employee market. There's a very different mindset. And so, we are going to have to learn how to motivate, how to evaluate, how to ensure that we're getting good value. And part of this, we mentioned retention as well, and create a culture. And so it's going to be challenging, but and I don't think this is the perfect document, and that's not a criticism. I think it's a living document, and it'll evolve through experience, but I think it's a good start, and the policy is a good start as we transition to what is going to be a new economy and a new employee environment, which, if the first 6 months of since COVID, or 18 months since COVID, I guess, has shown us that people are willing to move around and want to stay if it's the right place. And we have to demonstrate it's the right place. And I think this starts to demonstrate to our employees and prospective employees this is the right place. Thank you.
Thank you, and I don't disagree with you. I think that the putting in the one-year trial was absolutely the right move. Let's see if this is going to work for our organization. Member from Deep River, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recognizing that this is up to each individual and their position and an application base and an evaluation of that based on some of the background that's been given and the advantage and the stated advantages in a number of different areas. Has there been any discussion, or would there be any discussion around actually the county designating positions and saying you will work this way, remotely, flexible?
How do you eat an elephant, right? Through you, Chair, I'll try to tackle this. No, I think we're all part of this brainchild moving this forward, and not necessarily baby steps. This is actually a huge leap forward for this corporation. Modeled somewhat after other municipalities who have gone before us. My colleagues, of course, in different counties are using different methodologies. To identify those that work from home, I think there are a few that we could identify forever and always. I think that if I was to define it best as, I would rather not always, because there is there's a certain amount of collaboration that we all require in every one of our departments, and I think to designate someone at home would be a disadvantage for that staff member and for the corporation as a whole. So in terms of collaboration, in terms of bringing them in, some of them, even demographically, the shift is not what you would think. Many of our older employees may want to work from home, and our younger employees really relish being around other people. So I'd rather not, and I don't think any of my colleagues would suggest that they would pigeonhole somebody to say you will always work from home. We've got some space here. We've got space in all of our facilities. I think the flexibility to say you don't have to work in this location, you could work from home or in our prior or in Renfrew and on a regular basis would be an open option for them as well. So it's a long way to say no at this point. Perhaps we can learn from our lessons throughout the year and maybe designate those positions throughout that year and reassess through the trial period.
You've got Jeff Foss disease. Why use 5 words when you can use 25?
It's osmosis here.
The member from Killaloe, Haggerty, and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just from experience, our roads department, I think it's been 1 year, maybe 2 years. They're on a 4-day work week with a skeleton crew on Fridays. The actual employees really enjoy that because they work their 4 days per week, having Friday off. But what it does, it ripples through the organization, the entire corporation, where people will look at it and say, well, they have it, why don't we have it? Or vice versa. And I don't think it's really a healthy environment to be under. At least that's the feedback I've been getting. I'm sure other members have different scenarios also, but I know from our standpoint, it's not just directly the people that you're giving that benefit to, it's everyone else in the organization you have to consider also. Thank you.
Thank you, and I think in this particular case, I think that you've thought some of those things out, and that's why you're putting in the applications. That's why you're making it a 1-year trial. I think that was very prudent. Member from Abbotston Bromley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm probably picking this number out of thin air, but I'm going to suggest that COVID has accelerated this by about 5 to 6 years. We wouldn't be talking about this today if COVID hadn't existed. I sat on another agency 7 years ago, and we were deliberating on how much space we needed for the delivery of service, and it was dismissed out of hand. Any notion of working from home, virtual work, can't do that. And it is incredible when one must do something, how easy it is to find out that we can, in fact, do those things. And that what COVID has done is it has radically accelerated what we are doing. I am not disposed towards the recent collective strife that existed at the federal level with respect to that dynamic of that being negotiated. I think that the employer must maintain that. However, having said that, in picking up on Councillor Doncaster's comments, we're going to get there. I know that we're going to get there simply because I'm experiencing this in my home. My wife has been working in the complete virtual realm for about 17 years. And her colleagues, her team that she works with, one of them is in Rzeszów, Poland. One of them is just outside of Paris. One of them is in London. One of them is in Phoenix, Arizona. Another one is in Chicago. Those are her teammates. They don't get together. They don't have that collaborative. That's going to be a process to get there, but we're going to be making those decisions on what is best and most efficient. We're in a transition, and I think that I agree with Mr. Kelly that these are not small steps. They're pretty substantive steps, though I would acknowledge directly behind Mr. Kelly, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Belmore, I think that our recruitment ads now post whether this is an actual physical presence or a virtual presence. We're already recognizing this. This is an unstoppable. We're not going to destroy the looms. This is perhaps another industrial revolution. So we are going to get there. At some point, we are going to be in a spot where it's designated that is virtual. We're not equipping bricks and mortars simply to accommodate somebody to do something that they can do from home. However, we do need to make the first step, and I will certainly grant that we are making substantial steps here, and I commend a forward-looking approach to this. And ultimately, those decisions, any decisions on how we're evaluating the process, how we are moving forward in evaluating performance, even as we're doing this, should all be predicated with the bias that that's what we want to get to, is to provide that. And how do we get to there rather than it's not working, so how do we lessen what we wish, the direction that we wish to move into? That should be the basis, and the priority is that's where we're working. You may have seen quite recently where Mr. Musk, who has a fairly significant presence across the globe, is demanding that employees come back to work and saying that it is a moral consideration that the person that's building your house has to come and build your house. And I cannot think of anything more insipid. When we have somebody that must drive a truck to clear roads, of course they have to come. And that you can't comprehend what that distinction is make me question how you have become the Blofeld of the world.
All right. With those lovely words, I'm going to call for the vote on recommendation number 1. Please, all in favor. Thank you. And now recommendation number 2. I believe you've already read the recommendation, so I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder. Moved by the member from Laurentian Hills, second by the member from North Algona-Wilberforce. A little bit of background, please.
Thank you, Chair. And this second item, if you will, really addresses a very unique situation that we find within our long-term care sector, and in one home specifically, Bonnechere Manor. And I wonder, Madam Chair, since we have the Director of Long-Term Care with us today, for those of you who did not have the benefit of attending the Health Committee meeting earlier this week, I wonder if I could just ask Mike to just say a few words about some of the challenges that we are experiencing specific to Bonnechere Manor, which really has led to the development of the policy that we're talking about today. Thank you.
Where did he go? Oh, there he is.
Thank you, Chair, through you to committee. So, yeah, we're in a bit of a unique situation at Bonnechere Manor when it comes to recruiting, in that we have a number of vacancies that have been difficult to fill. Certainly exacerbated by COVID conditions, as is the case throughout healthcare across the province, across the nation. But for whatever reason, I think largely geographical, it seems that we seem to struggle a little more at Bonnechere Manor. And over the years, we've employed any number of initiatives, from engaging in a living classroom for PSWs to having preceptorships and numerous clinical placements, taking advantage of whatever provincial grants were available to us. But here we are at a point where we're having to fill our shifts with agency staff. And agency staff, I mean, at a cost to us. When we pay agency staff, we're paying the agency itself. We're paying the personnel at a higher rate that approaches our own overtime rates. We're paying for accommodations. We're paying for mileage. And all these things we were able to cover off as far as costs against COVID funding initiatives, which, as you're all aware, March 31st, the IPAC containment funding ceased to exist, and we're currently utilizing the Safe Start funds made available to the county to subsidize what we're paying in overages for the agency staff. So needless to say, it's time we employ additional strategies, and one of the things we're looking at is potentially a signing bonus. So it's something that's in its infancy right now with regard to what that might look like, and we'll have to seek legal consultation to flesh that out. And so it's something we had initially planned to bring to this meeting, but we need a little more time to work on it before we can present it.
Thank you. All right. I'll open it up to questions. You're good? Sure. All right. Member from North Algona Wilberforce.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I certainly can appreciate the situation that you're facing. CBC had a program on it just this past week, and actually we're interviewing the Director of Care at the Barry's Bay Lodge. And some of the costs they've seen cost increases of $100,000 over the last year, because of the fact that they can't fill the positions and they have to use the agency, and even some of the staff that I guess were full-time want to move to the agency because it gives them more opportunity to direct their own work schedules. So all of it does certainly add to the challenges that you're facing. So I do agree that this is something that might work and certainly is worth taking a stab at to see if it does. The other thing I am curious, I know the program that you currently have with Algonquin College to accelerate that training process. Are you seeing any more applicants coming through that program, or is it rather stagnant?
Through Chair to the councillor, certainly when we ran the classroom programs, we did retain a number of staff through that program. Unfortunately, that program, we're hoping we could run it again at Bonnechere Manor, but the critical mass isn't there to run it again. So that won't be available to us this time around.
Member from from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richards, please.
Thank you, Chair. Was there any conversation about, as far as an incentive program, education relief? So if a person goes to school for a year or 18 months and there is tuition, books, that type of thing, was there any consideration given to paying that to be hired? Thank you.
Through Chair to the councillor, we did engage in programs that did just that were funded through the province. We didn't engage in any that we funded ourselves at this point.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Question that came to mind when I was reading through this was and it was mentioned, or kind of mentioned, is the issue around retention. This is this is one way of potentially recruiting some people, but I think it may also create another issue around retaining current employees.
Yes. Member from Killoughby, Haggerty and Richards, sorry, I sort of thought I saw your hand up.
It did, but I slipped down. Just to follow up on the student loan part, what happens when we start recruiting kids in grade 12 and announce to them that you go to a school, come out of school, your tuition's paid, or we get a commitment from them prior to them even entering the program? I'm just thinking of different ways to recruit people.
Not to steal Mr. Blackmore's thunder or anything like that, but through you, Chair, yesterday, the day before, yesterday, the province has launched the Stay and Learn grant for, pardon me? Learn and stay and learn, play and play. I don't care what you call it. Whatever, some acronym or some saying that there are 3 streams that the province will now pay for your post-secondary education: paramedic services, nursing and nurse practitioners, I believe is the second one, and medical radiologists or lab techs, provided that you study in the area. And you will be required to commit to a term of service on the back end, up to 50% of the term of your schooling. So if nursing is 4 years, or whatever the term of education is in Algonquin College in Pembroke, for example, you will be required to return that service level back to the County of Renfrew service area, 50% or 2 years of that. So the province has launched that. Now, it doesn't cover PSWs at this point. I would suggest that if you're meeting a minister on the street, maybe you should extend it to PSWs or other practitioners of health services moving forward. But your suggestion, I think, has been heard. I think Mr. Ford must have heard you, Mr. Mayville, and has launched that tuition program moving forward.
Just to supplement, I think in a lot of areas, we're at a situation where we need to be aggressive recruiters and think out of the box. And we have to set our own way, how we want to do this, and be ultra aggressive. And no, I don't have a separate line to Doug Ford.
And I think that at health, I don't want to go down the rabbit hole, but you will hear at County Council that Mr. Blackmore does have some very innovative ideas and you heard him talk about the consultant, but we will have a more fulsome discussion about that at County Council. Member from Aviston Bromley, please.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. To put some perspective or perhaps context on this, I certainly commend Mr. Blackmore, all staff, on being forward-looking. But it's been a rearguard action for some time. Even the partnership, the collaboration with Algonquin College was when we were experiencing an enormous challenge 4 or 5 years ago, and that was innovative, but it has still been rearguard because that has kept us in the game. It has not advanced us, and even responding to Councillor Mayville's comments, being very aggressive, dynamic, innovative isn't getting us ahead. It's just allowing us to stay at the table, because everyone is in that situation. And in fact, we're not dealing only with the long-term care sector, i.e. The mobility of employees, whether it be at the Manor, the Lodge, or perhaps at Miramichi Lodge or Valley Manor, as Councillor Brose was suggesting, could be the hospitals. This competition, I think that it's appropriate that these 2 recommendations are contained kind of within the same item on today's agenda, because we are now witnessing an enormous evolution of employment, because we've been experiencing within long-term care, it's been most acute, the health human resource. That is scattered, and that has spread like a virus right across the entire health sector. It is no longer confined just to long-term care. There is this enormous gulf. We are seeing, of course, the requirement to have a very aggressive build of new inventory of housing. We're seeing within the municipal sector the challenge of recruiting employees. I see these things constantly, and I think, where are all of those people that are going to fill those positions that we need to build a lot more houses than we would otherwise? Not just to maintain the level of care that we have in long-term care, but now we're looking for an enhanced 4 hours of care. We have positions that the province has now provided funding for that we will utilize should we actually be able to allocate that. Within the health budget, you will note that between both Miramichi Lodge and the Manor, there's almost $1 million that we have not yet tapped into because we aren't getting those people. So not only have we challenged to meet kind of the legacy care that we've been providing, now we are finally an enhanced level of care, and the enormity of that challenge to fill that within this one sector, within this one area of our economy. So it is appropriate that these two are together because we are seeing a fundamental shift in workplace, in the employer-employee relationship, and I agree 100% with all of the comments here. We must be forward-thinking and aggressive and innovative, and all of that's going to do is maintain essentially the position that we're in because everybody is having that same conversation around their boardroom tables or their municipal chambers.
Or even in our small businesses. It's everywhere. All right, anything further? Then I will call for the vote on the second recommendation. All in favor? And could I have a mover and seconder for the report? Director of Corporate Service report, moved by the member from Killu, Haggerty, and Richards, seconded by, what? There's number 8. Oh, shoot, sorry. I was all, that was not me, that was him. Donahue's snarky today. Sorry, number 8, my apologies.
Thank you, Chair. On an annual basis, and typically following the work that staff does with respect to developing the budget and presenting it at the annual budget workshop, we want to ensure that our user fee bylaw is supportive of the items that were discussed throughout that entire process. And so now we bring before you a recommendation, and I'll read it into the record, that the Finance and Administration Committee recommends to County Council that a revised bylaw to establish and require payment of user fees and charges be adopted, and further that the previous user fee bylaw 2521 be repealed.
Thank you. May I have a mover and seconder, please, to get it on the floor? Moved by the member from Amherst Bromley, seconded by the member from Broodnell, Lyndoch, and Raglan. And we'll just do a little bit of background.
Thank you, Chair. Really just going sort of department by department, if you will. Under Corporate Services, Provincial Offenses, we had a separate line item for a prosecutor hourly rate. This committee will recall that our prosecutor was a contracted service, not a County of Renfrew employee. Earlier this year, of course, our prosecutor became a Justice of the Peace, and so we now have a county employee providing municipal prosecution for us. So we already have a wage rate determined for any staff who are doing technical work. And so we're recommending that we remove this prosecutor charge since that arrangement is no longer in place. Secondly, under Corporate Services for Information Technology, we previously had an individual who was responsible for and was delivering training, information technology specific training, and so we highlighted within the old user fee bylaw an area for IT training. We don't have any plans in place, and we're not currently delivering that type of a service. Doesn't mean that we wouldn't do it in the future if our capacity and ability was there, that we were delivering in-house and or making training available to the broader community, which is what we did historically. However, that is not in place at this time, and so we are looking to remove that. Within emergency services, paramedic service, there was a charge for deploying a paramedic crew for special events. So, for example, in Eganville, the snowmobile races, that sort of a thing, where they wanted to ensure that they had a paramedic vehicle and staff on site to deal with emergencies. There is simply an updating of that particular charge, which has not been changed since 2018. And Public Works, with respect to a meeting that took place in April, there was a change that was approved in the fee structure for private advertising signage, and so that is being reflected within the Public Works area, field advertising signs for a 3-year period as opposed to an annual process. And then finally, for Bonnechere Manor and the Health Committee, approving a change for the Senior Adult Day Program full day rate and the removal of a half-day rate and bathing rate only. We haven't had any changes in this user fee bylaw charge in the last 12 years, and so they are simply reflecting a change from $20 to $25 as a full day rate, and the removal of the half-day and bath-only charges. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Comments, questions, concerns? Member from Deep River, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just around the IT fees that we have there. My concern with this one is that if something was to come up next month that the county thought was advantageous and wanted to take advantage of it, we don't have a mechanism for providing that to, in this words, lower tier municipalities or something. If we don't, why don't we just leave it in there? That's my thought.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, we still have within the user fee bylaw a section which prescribes hourly rates for county staff to be providing services for other organizations, typically to lower tiers, and we're using that for our human resource coordinator, who is providing HR services to lower tier municipalities. But those rates are available for any service, any staff member at the County of Renfrew to provide, and on a fee-for-service basis, charge out those rates. We also have the ability, I think at any time, if we were to bring somebody in-house to provide a course, workshop, seminar, whatever the case may be, that has a broader audience, lower tier municipalities, for example, where we would look at the cost of bringing that individual in, and then on a cost recovery basis, simply just recovering that. It's $1,000 for somebody to offer a workshop, and then we've got 10 participants, so it's a $100 fee on a cost recovery basis. Those are things that we can still do. This one really just spoke to what we did have as a service where I think 6 times a year we were offering courses on Microsoft Word and Excel and PowerPoint, and I think there was a number of other things over the years. We had a big initiative internally to develop the technology knowledge, if you will, of our own staff, and we made that available to others in the community to participate in that at the same time. But that program has ended a number of years ago, and so we're not delivering that type of a program. Simply, as I said, I think in the future, we can certainly look to getting back to that, and we're hoping that the other sections of the user fee bylaw, the hourly rate charge, might be just more applicable to things that we'll do in the future that way. Thank you.
Anything further? All in favor? This is going to be like deja vu. Can I get a mover and seconder for the report as a whole? Moved by the member from Killaloe, Haggerty and Richard, seconded by the member from Broodnell, Lindock and Raglan. All in favor? Awesome. Is there any new business this afternoon? I see none. We have no, oh, sorry, member from Deep River.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not particularly a public service announcement, but I just wanted to point out something that's relatively important to Renfrew County, in that in April of 2023, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization has signed a long-term management agreement with their counterparts in the country of France. And that happened in April, and this is, and the reason I bring it up is because, and this is particularly, the Nuclear Waste Management Organization is tasked with implementing a solution for high-level waste, so the fuel that has been produced in Canada only, and now so cooperating with their counterpart in France. And then that was in April, and then more news in May of 2023, just a week ago. The Nuclear Waste Management Organization has signed a cooperative agreement with the U.S. Department of Energy for the same type of cooperation around the safe long-term storage of used nuclear fuel. So it's of particular interest to Renfrew County, and as we see, decommissioning activities and, the CNL dealing with the legacy wastes from 70 years of operations at Atomic Energy of Canada Limited. It's just highlighting the importance of this around the world and that we are part of it.
Thank you. Any other new business? That was kind of a PSA. I like it. Do we have a closed meeting? We're good? Okay. Jeff's like, I don't know. The date of our next meeting is Thursday, June 15th. And can I ask for a mover and seconder to adjourn? Member from Amherst Bromley, seconded by the member from Brudenell, Lindock, and Raglan. All in favor? And we are adjourned. Good work today.